When we think about the catch window, where you have this windows of opportunity, an athlete has a small opportunity to make a play on the ball.
I actually lost about $165,000. Not that I told the client no. You lose someone else's money and it's stuck.
And when a deal like that is on the table, what would you say actually determines who gets that?
Those willing to move first. How you react to certain situations.
To completely change your life.
That's the one thing that we as investment managers fear the most, is having to explain losses.
That's some pressure. I never thought about it from that perspective.
When your window of opportunity opens, will you be ready?
All right, y'all. Welcome to the Catch Window Podcast. This podcast is all about how do we seize opportunities when they come up in business? How do we make sure we don't miss our window of opportunity and ability to, whether it's acquire a business partner, whether it's to acquire capital or move up in some way, shape, or form in the business world? We have a special guest here today. Zach, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do and give your backstory?
I am global investment manager for a boutique firm in the UAE. Moved to Dubai about 7 months ago after deciding I wanted a little bit of change from the UK. Had a business management consultancy firm in the UK. We specialised in mergers and acquisitions for leaders in the financial and legal space. And after a change in government, I'm sure as an American you can understand that brings a lot of turbulence in business. And with that, the business wasn't going in the direction I wanted it to go. Because of my age, I'm only 29. An opportunity came up for me to relocate to the UAE and work as an investment manager. So grabbed it with both hands and I've been here ever since. Prior to that, I helped set up a plethora of different types of businesses outside of the financial service and legal sector, which was mainly in hospitality. Hospitality is very different to average business because if there's a problem, you tend to need to sort it right there and then. You don't have time to say, okay, we'll circle back to this. That's where the urgency that I approach everything comes from, because there is no way to avoid any issues. For example, it's where your catch window comes into play. If you have an issue, there's no way to push it off and deal with it at a later date. It's a problem right here and right now.
100%. No, appreciate you sharing that. And we're excited to have you on and obviously to learn a lot about what you do. And I think it'd be really valuable to people listening to just hear how you operate and how you've been able to achieve the success you have. But the first question I always like to ask is, in your world and what you deal with, the reason why I named the podcast The Catch Window is I feel like in the sports world, it's very similar to business in the sense of when we think about the catch window, right? An athlete has a small opportunity to make a play on the ball, and that play could be a touchdown, or that play can be a major first down in the game. And I feel like it's very similar in the business world, where you have this windows of opportunity to excel, to take your business to the next level, to scale, or to completely change your life. And when a deal like that is on the table, what would you say actually determines who gets the chance to seize that opportunity?
Those willing to move first is what I found a lot of the time. How you react to certain situations reminds me of when I initially started the consultancy business. We were effectively looking to build teams for people. And when we were delivering on that front, the managing directors of these companies, the boards, realised that they could trust us, and they started asking us if we could get with other things, which I had frankly no clue about. I did not know how to solve these issues, but I said no problem. And I walked out the meeting, went back to my office and thought, how are we actually going to solve this problem? Because I've just agreed to it. And it took a lot of research before even being able to go back. But the main thing was I said yes. When they asked, I could have turned around and said, oh no, sorry, I don't really think that it's something I would be able to help with. But I learned, I was given the opportunity and I grabbed it with both hands. And that is so key to me. And expanding anything, whether it's your network, your business as a whole, even a friend group. It's as simple as that. Someone might ask you to come and play paddle, for example, which is what happened with me. Never played paddle before in my life. Didn't know the rules. I'd had tennis before at a couple of country clubs. So I thought, cool, I'll be able to figure it out. And a lot of it boils down to agreeing to something and then figuring it out at a later date.
Man, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And when you think about the opportunities you've been given and where you've placed yourself and where you've excelled, I always kind of go back to, and this is a big thing just in the sports world. And honestly, in my background completely, when it comes to just fitness performance, we talk a lot about just mentality and how much your mentality and your ability to stay composed has an impact on your success. How would you say that impacts who gets that opportunity, who gets to excel in your world when it comes to staying composed and staying level-headed?
Thought about that quite a lot since moving to the UAE. because in a sense, in general, a lot of people you see doing well are not necessarily doing things the right way. They're putting themselves first as opposed to the client. But there's no longevity in that. And to me, I'd rather not lie to a client and say, I can promise them X returns. You should not be promising anything in my sector at all, because you never know what could happen. Something could come out tomorrow and affect whatever someone has invested in. So easy done. Some people might have money in Tesla and it's performing really well. And then Elon Musk comes out the following day and just says something so wild and it just decimates that investment. And then you have to build a whole new strategy. We're now it seems to be the markets are finding a little bit of stability. The downside to that is stability breeds stagnation.
No, it's something that, as you were kind of talking through how you go about business in general, and that kind of caught my ear. And I think it's very similar even when I'm dealing with clients prospecting. You mentioned a huge part of the aspect of being honest and not over promising in your processing. And it made me think there are people who do what you do, right? Or may not be as experienced as what you do, who may not understand the importance of that and may even lose business over that. So I guess my question would be to you, have you ever seen someone miss out on an opportunity or miss out on a deal? And why would you say that had happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I've lost out on deals before because a client came in, meet me, and when we looked at it, so we looked at the portfolio that I'd put together for him, the returns weren't big enough for him. But for what he was looking to invest in terms of his personal wealth, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting that in anything of a higher risk grade than what I had. The way that I'd structured the portfolio, I actually lost about $165,000 on that deal just because not that I told the client no. I steered into something that was more stable, where he was looking to take much bigger risks, and I wasn't comfortable with that. Because that's the one thing that we as investment managers fear the most, is having to explain losses to clients, to boards, to other family offices, and to wherever our capital's coming from. Whereas the average person, or the average investor, knows they're losing their own money, so it doesn't feel as bad. Whereas if you lose someone else's money, man, it sucks.
Man, that's some pressure. I never thought about it from that perspective, but that makes a huge difference with, I think, the level of pressure. There's a lot that you have to deal with concerning that, and especially on I guess, the client acquisition side. But I guess what would that perspective, or I guess what does the approach look like when it comes to retaining clients? I guess that process looks when you figure out what will it take to keep people.
Really, it totally depends on the client. It's different horses for different courses. There's some clients that like to stay in touch on a weekly basis. There's some that are in a position of they just want to set it and forget it. I make sure that I speak with all my clients every quarter at least. And I do try and push for touching base at least once a month. But you don't want to be overbearing, especially if it is long-term investments that they've got. So if it's someone that's planning for 10 years or 20 years, there's no point in being on top of them every single month and trying to sit down and chat with them.
I know we've been talking about client acquisition, retention, how you go about that. I guess when it comes to two different managers and they have the identical returns, but one looks sharp, composed, energetic, do you think that matters, or what's your thought on that and how that plays a part in client acquisition?
It totally depends on your approach. So some people are a little more salesy, and they sell themselves as opposed to what they're actually going to do for the client. And some people are heavily operations focused, where they're just data driven, don't really speak much about themselves, because sometimes they don't think the client really cares who they are. I'm probably the latter, where I feel like the client probably doesn't care who I am. Obviously, there's certain clients that I've got different relationships with and you can be a lot closer with. I'm much more data driven than a typical sales advisor. And that's probably because of my background, where you can sell yourself as much as you want, but it's totally irrelevant. It's based on results.
No, that totally makes sense. I see it very similar to even in the sports world or in the coaching world, right? You want someone who looks the part and someone who's kind of sharp and put together, but results are results. And if you're not able to produce results, none of the rest of that even matters anyway. And kind of along the lines of being more data driven, when it comes to locating or getting the deal, what version of yourself needs to show up to get those deals?
I think to close the deals, you need to display data. That's when you need to show your analytic thinking, how you can solve or how you can bring a solution to the issue. And that's when a lot of people fall. Whereas if you've just been solutions driven the entire sort of relationship build, it doesn't feel like a lot's changing, and it doesn't feel like you need to move into sort of a different persona. Whereas the sales heavy guys, that's kind of where they struggle. And that's why they might not close certain deals, because they've been so focused on selling themselves to the client that when the client sees this big sort of change in persona, they can feel uncomfortable. And I'm not saying one way is right, or some people do it effortlessly, but from what I've seen, what I've experienced, those sales heavy guys can fall at the final hurdle, if you will, as opposed to the analytic advisor, because they've already been obviously displaying that.
I think that makes perfect sense. When it comes to, we mentioned a lot about the data and collecting that and how you present and how you go about acquiring clients. And we talked about your day, and even some days where your day starts super early in the morning and some days are longer than others. In your experience and what you've seen working with people in your field, do you feel like how you feel, your health, mentally, physically impacts how your day goes or how you go about the processes of your job? Or do you feel like that doesn't have as much of an impact?
Yep, definitely. Some days, if you're getting up at 1 a.m. and you're straight through until p.m., like myself today, you do need to take yourself away for at least an hour on the treadmill and just not look at a screen for some time, just so you can reset and know how you're going to go into the rest of the meetings, how you're going to tackle the rest of the tasks that you have for that day. I like to schedule all my meetings as early as possible so I can give 100% to the client and the people that I'm going to be speaking with. Any kind of admin tasks, I like to hold them off until the end of the day because don't really require much energy.
So I see a lot of overlap with how you structure your day and how you look at just overall health and fitness, mentally, mentally, physically, right? I love the idea of being those tasks that require the most mental acuity and focus towards the beginning of the day, and the tasks that don't require as much towards the end of the day. And when it comes to structuring fitness or health through nutrition and things of that nature, to optimize these things so when those windows of opportunity show up, you're able to seize them properly, you're able to get the most out of these meetings and these calls and stuff. It's utilizing the earlier parts of your day when you have the most energy, you have the most focus, so you can show up and be the best, whether that's for your workout or whether that's for a meeting or whether that's for anything concerning business. And I think that's a great habit to build and instill. Are there any other habits you feel like you need to ensure that you don't miss that window of opportunity?
Yeah, I would say taking the first hour of your day for yourself, making sure that you're not just waking up, showering and going straight into your day. Like that first hour of your day is so important to me anyway, just to know who I am, because you can get lost in your work and forget who you are. And you see it quite a lot where these people don't remember who they are until they're maybe out having a beer after work or something. And then that's when they show who they really are. Someone might be extremely serious and not want to talk to any other colleagues during the day. And then when they go for a beer, they're a totally different person. And it's like you're still with the exact same people that you're with during the day. You're just not in that environment where you're being a different person, if you will. So it's taking that time in the morning to remember who you are, remember what you want and where you're going.
100%, man. So insightful, so good, so true. Not to lose sight of that, to always have that and always have the right mentality about what you're doing and how you go about it, man. And I think of people who are entering this field who aren't where you're at. What would be some advice you would give to those younger managers who are wanting to do what you've done, go where you've been, reach that level? And just where should they start when it comes to strategy or just focusing on their own personal performance? What would you suggest with that?
Speak to everyone, give everyone the time of day, because you never know, especially in finance. Someone might approach you and ask the bare minimum. And a lot of the time advisors are like, I can't be bothered dealing with this client. I've met him. He doesn't seem to be super wealthy. I don't think I'm going to get a lot of business off of this. 9 times out of 10, that's the guy with the most money. That's the guy with way more money than the guy that's rocking up to a client meeting in a Lamborghini or a Range Rover with all the jewellery on and all the designer clothes. That's the guy that's got so much more money because he knows that he's got it. He doesn't need to show. He doesn't need to rub it in anyone's face because he's already financially literate. So that's the ones that they're difficult in the beginning because they're effectively testing you out. They don't want to show all their cards compared to the loudmouth guy that says, I've got this, I'm ready to go with this. And then those guys tend to drop what they initially promised, where the quiet, unassuming investor is always the one that ramps it up. So you're giving everyone the time of day because you never know what someone's background is until you've actually sat at that meeting and built up a relationship with them. And it's such a trust-based business because at the end of it, you're dealing with someone's financial future. That's how you need to look at it.
It's good. Wow. That is really good. And I love that. We're in a trust business and communicate, talk. Honestly, business in general, I feel like when it comes to the success, the ones who know how to communicate the best, the ones who know how to connect with people are the ones who are going to succeed the most. A lot of people say focus on the charts and the data, focus on all these different things, focus on getting good at this thing here. And just to simply learn how to speak, learn how to communicate with as many people as you can and build trust. What a great foundation to start with that. You obviously achieved success and you've done a lot. Are there any big goals for you on the horizon in the next 6 months or a year?
My goals would be getting back into shape, dropping some body fat. That's the downside of living in Dubai. It's so easy to order food in, and fast food is so much cheaper over there, and it's the convenience of it. For you to get chicken and rice and vegetables and stuff like that, it is literally double the price. It became too easy just to order Shake Shack or just not nutritionally beneficial food. So that's a big focus of mine at the moment.
I love that. That's good.
I don't like to put monetary goals on myself. I don't want to say I want to bring in the next 6 months, I'd like to bring in another 3 million assets under management.
I love that.
It's good to have goals like that. I think some people need them. You just need to be ready, because you could have one conversation with someone and then the following week, and then you hit that goal within a week, whereas you've set yourself 6 months to do it. And then it's that kind of constant and chasing that you get wrapped up in, how you begin to lose yourself. So it's like, I'll set myself like a big goal for the year, but short-term goals, building a bigger client bank and getting in shape.
That's a good goal. I love that mentality around the monetary goals, about not really setting those and focusing on those bigger factors, I think, of identity. And it's very similar, honestly, even with when we look at health and fitness and how that looks and how that works for your lifestyle. We look at it on the athletic performance, but we also look at it just the day to day, becoming the person who does X, Y, and Z rather than I need to start doing this thing. I always say it this way, rather than let's add something to our plate of things we're already doing, business, work, all the other parts of our life. Health and fitness is all about making that plate bigger, expanding what we're able to do and what we're capable of so we can do more and then eventually have more. So that's always good insight that I always love having when it comes to that stuff. And I think it's very similar to your mentality around monetary goals. Just like you said, a week from now, a few days from now, a month from now, that can completely change whatever that goal or trajectory was. I think that's super awesome, man. What would you say is the big thing you need to do in order to hit those current goals that you have?
Push for referrals. Definitely push for referrals. So when I'm catching up with clients, it is asking them. I've absolutely no shame in it, because I don't like spending money on marketing, because when someone tries to market to me, I hate it. I don't like it. I don't want to be marketed to. I want to make up my own decision. I don't want to be not tricked into something, but I want to make my own mind up about it. In this business, when it is a trust-based business, who are you going to trust more? Are you going to trust your friend that said, hey, I spoke to Zach about this private equity offering, it's doing really well, I think you should maybe have a look at it if you're in a position to? Or would you trust someone popping up as an advert on a social media platform or a news platform or any kind of online platform? Who are you going to trust more? You're going to trust your friend every single time.
100%.
Because most of our friends are all in, I'm not going to, not similar positions, but you wouldn't be friends with someone unless you had a similar mindset to them and similar values to them. So if it's good for them, it's probably going to be good for you as well. Whereas some random person, say, pointing at you on a social platform ad saying, hey, this is a great idea, this is a great idea for you. And it's why I kind of laugh at you probably see them all the time, like the real estate agent adverts on social media platforms where they're dressed in a suit that, quite frankly, the Joker would probably second guess putting on in the morning, saying, this is going to be the best thing for you. And it's like, you don't even know you literally don't know who your audience is. You've got no idea who your audience is. You're just promising something that you can't really deliver. Because two different people might look at that and what it might be right for one person and it might be god awful for someone else. It might not be delivering what the other person needs. And first impressions are so important. So after you've said, oh, this is right for you, and then you actually go, I might have a look at that, and then you realise that it's not, you go, this person's saying that this is right for you. It's not right for everybody. Not everything is right for everyone. You need to be so tailor-made when it comes to people's investments. There is no one size fits all. It boils down to truly diversifying your portfolio, especially with the way the world is at the moment. Omega, there seems to be no solid ground to build anything on, which is why coming to boutique firms and alternative asset managers is really important, because they are agile. The big massive companies like Bank of America, for example, they cannot be as agile as a boutique investment firm, because there's boards and execs that all needs to pass before that new product or that move can be made. Whereas with a smaller team, you can be so much more flexible. You can sit down and agree on something by the morning and implement it by the afternoon.
Man, I love that. So insightful. Even the mentality of the personalization. I can just see that's such a huge, important thing. And I think it's honestly especially in this new day and age with, we talk about portfolio management, but just honestly business in general, of trust-based first and knowing how to connect with the person and truly understand them, truly know them, and making that be the thing you lead. But I think it's going to be super important, and it's just so true, man.
LinkedIn is the best place. That's where we connected. You kind of get a clearer image of what someone is through LinkedIn. Absolutely. I'd like to introduce you to my friend